So today we are holding the fourth meeting within the framework of the series of workshops, Contemporary Area Studies. Contemporary Area Studies, a project of the School of International Regional Studies, of the Faculty of World Economy and International Affairs of the HEC University. Our guest today is dear brother Hani Suleiman Kerba, manager of the Arab Center for Research and Studies from lovely Cairo. Let me thank you, dear friend, to be with us and accepting our invitation. It's a great honor for us. So today our discussion will be divided into two main parts. During the first one, we will listen a point of view of our expert on international approach on defeating COVID-19. And the second part will be devoted to discussion of the current situation in Egypt and impact of pandemic on domestic and foreign agenda of the country. With us today also Dr. Vera Vishnyakova, the head of the School of International Regional Studies of the Faculty of World Economy and International Affairs of HEC University. Dr. Vishnyakova, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Murat. Thank you. Dear Dr. Kerba, dear colleagues, friends, and guests of our seminar. Firstly, I would like to thank you and to each and every one of you to join us today. Before we get started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Dr. Kerba, who generously agreed to explain the current situation in Egypt. I would like to emphasize that we have started our seminar, which are called Contemporary Area Studies, 2 weeks ago. However, the topic of coronavirus is still on the top of rating political and economic world news. We hear a lot of information about the awful situation in Europe and countries in the USA connected with spreading coronavirus. We stay at home because the number of sick is increasing every day in Russia. Most of the countries have locked down their borders. And the government of every country is thinking seriously about the future and try to find the way to save their countries from the world crisis. Today, thanks Dr. Kerba, we have a chance to get more information about how the Egyptian government and ordinary people prevent the spreading coronavirus and how they try to protect the economy of own country from the crisis. I think that we will get a lot of interesting and useful information. Murat, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vera Vishnyakova. Really, Egypt is one of the important countries for us, especially in academic point of view. So, and now with great pleasure, I give the floor to our dear friend and expert, Hani Suleiman. Please, أهلا وسهلا.
أهلا وسهلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Murad, the director of the Russian Middle East Association. And I'd like to thank Dr. Vera, my new friend. Thank you. And
thank you.
Welcome to all our listeners. I'll talk tonight about two basic notes. The impact of coronavirus crisis on international relations in the global system. The second issue is about the evaluation of the Egyptian experience to facing COVID-19 virus in Egypt, how the government, the state, the procedures they did in facing this crisis in Egypt. So I want to take for the first section of the topic. You know, coronavirus is the biggest challenge facing humanity and the international community now, and any other crisis in the world have retreated as the challenge continues to besiege humanity with more than 1 million and 2,100,000 infected and about 70,000 deaths worldwide, you know. So we are talking about first, I'll talk about 9 issues. The first one is redefine global risks and challenges and demonstrate the failure of the international system to address them, and the international system reveal. So the first global war, not the third war, we talk here about the first global war, a new concept that Dr. Ali Din Hilal, one of the Egyptian professors in political science, talked about. We talk now about three features about this global war. The first feature is that this war is a piece of the geographical area about covered the entire globe, and not like World War I or World War II, as it was in the first step, a European war. But this war nowadays is a global war, the first global war. The second feature is that this war cover all the children, young people, and male and female, all the people and all the countries over the world. The third feature is that it is a war without enemies, no enemy. You treat with a hidden enemy, not like the traditional wars and the wars we know by the default way. The fourth aspect related to how to defeat the enemy. In previous cases, First World War I and II was continental, as long as their parties boast equipments, tools, and capabilities, and they had the political will and the dream of victory over the enemy. As for our war now, today, the enemy is present everywhere about around us, and its defeat is not achieved without the cooperation of all human beings, not in only persons or each state alone. We can talk now about the failure of the international community to treat with this crisis, the failure of the international community to confront some real issues and crises such as climate or ozone holes and environment issues like before, as demonstrated by the failure to deal with forest fires and the preservation of the environment, and facing poverty and diseases all over the world. And the COVID-19 is the true test of this matter, and a big test for all humanity and all the United Nations and the public society. And I think that after that crisis, these issues will have a specific importance, especially within the COVID-19, after the corridors of European countries away from the differences and the political tensions that occurred in the past between Trump and the European countries, especially the escalation between the United States of America and China and with European Union. The second issue is about the failure of international institutions and organizations to fully and completely manage or deal with this crisis. The first point is that the need to redefine the contemplation of human capacity. Is the COVID-19 revealed a huge and unpredictable global deficit in this fight against epidemics and the viruses, and mankind believed that man had triumphed and was able to defeat diseases. It's not true. The COVID-19 became to prove that the human, with all the science and the technology, can't deal with this enemy, and there is a great gap between the human science and what the man reached and the threats that he can face in these days. The other point is World Health Organization dealing and the management of the crisis. It was a great failure for the beginning of dealing with this crisis from the WHO, because it was not correct miscalculation from the beginning, and the failure to probably assess the matters of the beginning of the crisis, which made some people talk about this organization was collusion with China and laxity to giving strict warning to other countries. World Health Organization didn't take the urgent or procedures can countries like Italy or Spain uh, feel fear against what happened. We realized that it was late to deal with this crisis. Other point, we can talk about the United Nations and the absence of a serious cooperative mechanism to deal with this crisis. United Nations failed to deal with economic and political, especially political crises all over the world, in Syria, in Libya, Yemen, and many countries. But in this crisis, it was a global crisis faced all the countries of the world. So we expected another deal with the UN, different from the other cases, but it was the same line of failure in this crisis. The third main point is the decline of globalization and the return of the features of the nation state, the concept of nation state versus globalization, and the liberal state versus the totalitarian state to deal with this crisis. So the first point is the decline of globalization. The coronavirus dealt a sudden strong blow to the idea of globalization. And we can talk about the idea receding has become, it is a temporary or a permanent recession of this case. The globalization, which the world has not seen before since the old man founded human settlements before the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago. But the coronavirus, COVID-19, strikes today at the foundation of this globalization, which humanity calculated a solid foundation that can be shaken. We can say among the most important principles of globalization is the freedom of movement of capital, the movement of individuals, and which is now facing a major challenges by stopping air traffic, closing borders, and the state of global fragmentation, which makes some people re-talk about the nation state as an old new concept. The capitalist system, in his way for the return of some concepts of socialism, such as participation, society, and economic security. The other point is emerged from this crisis is the future of the European Union as it is a great challenge after the United Kingdom Brexit and these talks. But now COVID-19 made the idea of European Union at stake. It added another strong challenge after the Brexit crisis, where the problem was spread with the outbreak in Italy and Spain, which made Italian citizens as well as Italian officials get rid of the European Union flag and raise the flag of Italy, as they refuse the way that European Union left Italy alone facing this crisis alone. So we have another point, important point, talking about totalitarian state facing this crisis. The question is the way that liberal states deal with this crisis is the best way, or the way that China as a totalitarian state dealt with this crisis and succeeded to protect the state from high spread for the COVID-19 by strict procedures not allowed in other countries. So the fourth main point we can talk about, COVID-19 will make economic challenges and economic depression and a global crisis and the state's role in the economy. The question now, what is the role of the state to intervention in the economy? And we talk also about oil conflict. First point is a global economic recession, and the many international indicators speak of an economic depression, a global crisis that will exceed that was occurred in 1933 or even what happened in 2008. Several reports from UNCTAD and other institutions talk about the global economy will lose about $2.5 trillion, and this is estimates rise according to expectations from other institutions. We talk about the global trade rates will drop a large levels. It start to happen, in fact. Where the growth rate of some major countries is expected to be in a low levels. Other reports confirmed that the impact of the crisis will be relatively low on developing countries, but the problem will be in the challenge of providing alternatives to these countries to meet the shortage of imports in certain strategic commodities. Other point is the entire state. We talk about the Gulf countries. The states will depend on the oil as a main factor in the budget. And now the Middle East, especially Gulf countries, the main oil rentier countries suffer from the multiplier effect due to the sharp drop in the oil price, which greatly affects their revenues and the general budget, making them in difficult and challenge and bad situation, especially as their budgets are fully dependent on the oil component, which imposes the necessity of those countries reviewing their policies and making a kind of diversification of the economy between different sectors, resources, and other factors. The main questions that COVID-19 tell us is, what is the role of the state in the economy? It is another challenge. To what step is the state permitted to interfere in the economy? Between full intervention and the market control, the United States did it before when it entered the economic crisis of 2008, which is the United States. It's the main country respect the capitalism, and it has poured billions of dollars to save the real estate market and the market control in this crisis. Now, the matter is more frequent with the United States adopting the emergency plan and pumping to about $2 trillion to confront the crisis, and the Saudi Arabia announced that it will pay salaries of the private sector for 2 months, I think. The measures from the other countries to support the economy and companies, including Egypt here, we did that, which restores the question to the forefront. Is the system really the capitalist depends on lesser or more intervention in the economy? It is a question we have to answer it. Other point is some warning about the developmental state, the developmental state that performs must services and rules along with all over the country, where the government and state institutions play strategic roles in this time. So the private sector is in back, and who face this crisis is the state, which depends on its institutions to face this risk these days. Other point in the economic factor is the oil conflict. This crisis, they are complicated calculations in the sharp decline in oil prices, to about $25 for barrel, and the price of shale oil has fallen to in USA, which puts OPEC in a major crisis in its expected decisions these days. Especially, there are many talks about the Saudi Arabia and the Russian dispute about the oil price and the policies. So that made Trump talk about such false news, he say, is the real cause of this decrease of the price, really. The fifth point we talk about, are we facing the formation of a new world order created by COVID-19 already? The changing international system and the balance of power. We here want to talk about some points between America and China. Again, the crisis raised the new old question about the nature of the international system. Is the unilateral, bilateral, or multipolar, and the United States really able to leading the world with an individual and its selfish tendency, or this attitude from Trump and the USA? Can America really, is it able to lead the world as a one power or not in this crisis? As the USA from the start of the crisis used this crisis as Trump named the crisis as China virus, to use it as a political tool to fight China, not to cooperate with it to find a solution to this urgent situation. We here talk about human security and military security. COVID-19 will make a new discussions about the post-corona world will be represented not by your lack of military spending and the arms race according to the traditional view, but there will be other important factors represented in medical scientific progress and the ability to adapt and prepare for humanitarian crisis, health and environmental challenges, and providing solutions to them in a framework that serves the whole and not the individual state. A system in which the state and society are also reliable. The cultural the cultural level of individuals is very important at this stage. So not the traditional view of the army race will dominate for the future. We are talking about a new world order. So here I'll borrow Singer's speech. He said that the damage caused by the recent outbreak of the COVID-19 virus may be temporary, but its effect is in the political and economic turmoil that has caused it may continue for many generations. He talked also about the exceptional circumstances suggested as imminent danger that doesn't target any one person, but rather randomly and destructively. Managing the crisis, dealing with it, and building the future through three steps. The first is to enhance the world's ability to fight infections, diseases through the development of scientific research. And second step is the relentless pursuit of dealing with the damage caused to the global economy by the outbreak of the epidemic that humanity has never seen before in terms of speed and amplitude. And the third step is protection of the principles of the liberal global order as the third area that should be focused on. But this speech of Kissinger, the question to Kissinger and for you, can the current USA administration with Trump be able to achieve this new world order by leading this global economy and the global society? I think the answer is no, and I want to hear the answer also from you. Sixth main factor is the individual behavior, and we are talking about the mask of the Western progress and civilizations, the Western civilization and the attitude in this crisis. We here want to talk about the politicization of the crisis between China and America. I talked about this before, that from the beginning of the crisis, there have been attempts by Trump to use it as a tool to attack China in describing it as a China virus, which opened a space of tension and attraction. And he didn't miss the opportunity to cooperate early to prevent this spread and create an international core of the largest powers' international crisis treatment, but he failed in this. We here can talk about the individualism of the West countries, some countries through agents and intermediaries of directly and carrying out some behaviors that prove that the absence of meaning of cooperation, collective thinking, and comprehensive response to the crisis. Some countries have purchased some shipments of medical supplies and muzzles from airport docks and changed their destination that the United States did. The United States established by paying three multiply the price and take all the tools or medical tools to USA instead of France. And also Turkey refraining from supplying and exporting some orders for masks and medical supplies to some countries, including Italy and the United States. Also, America pay huge sums to take the buy doctors from many countries. This devoted to individualism, engagement, and the individual dealing with the crisis, not to put global solutions to all the countries. We here can talk about racism in COVID-19 time. It appeared in two ways, I think. French doctors announced that they are about to find vaccine and testing phase to deal with COVID-19, but they talked about we have to make many still we have to deal with it with African citizens first, because if they are any dangerous or to lives, we can find it. So they we can talk about racism here, and also the epidemic vaccine race from many countries, and Trump, especially United States. Trump has struggled to secure any vaccine reached and contemplate the minds of the businessmen and the purchase of intellectual property rights for the American companies. The COVID-19 seventh point, we can talk about role of arms and civil military relations. The crisis revealed the importance of what the theories of civil military relations have talked about regarding to the importance of the roles that the armies play in risks and disasters like these days. We can talk about despite the role of the other state institutions and civil society represents, but the role of armies and the military in the developing countries, especially in facing these risks, are very important, and it's these talks will be very important in the future. 8th point, we can talk about reordering the priorities of each country and considering their domestic policies. We talk here about the medical care and services, where many countries, even the big states, are now talking about the need to focus on supporting the medical sector and the medical care and increasing their budget allocations and redefining priorities for these states. Second point, we can talk about more investment in health and education. Many countries, especially in the Middle East now, Egypt here, we talk about this of this now, where there is a state of review and awareness from the world of the importance of investing in education and health and giving it a priority in state policies, and preparing for such a crisis is important in the coming future. 9, we can talk about transformation and the redefining the human behavior beyond COVID-19. There is in the first place that this epidemic shattered the inner world of millions of people and killed their dreams, and they lost their balance and their future planning. And the second thing is the human being who is a subject to procedures has not been exposed to it for more than a century. New challenges we face for the first time, and it is certainly very big than humanity witnessed in the First or Second World War. In another way, we talk here all the countries all over the world, and the people today live in a state of permanent fear. There is a fear around us all over the world. Everyone feel his life is threatened, and sometimes panic because of the news that surrounds him all the time about the number of injured and deaths, and comes with the feeling that he may be the next victim of this deadly virus. In all this increases the state of fear that he protects himself from hidden and invisible enemy that awaits him everywhere and all the time. These are the main points I want to talk about, how the COVID-19 will affect the international relations, our lives, and the relation between countries and states and the new global society and the new world order. I hope I hope I put many good points, and I hope you could understand me and forgive me for my bad English. This was the first part of my speech. And second, I'll talk about the evaluation of Egyptian strategy against COVID-19. Mr. Murad, if you want to talk or to
No, it's
permit.
okay. Thank you so much. About your English, it's really good, in my opinion, because you should understand that it's not our mother tongue, and we will do our best. So I can advise you, maybe if you want, we can try to be like in question and answer about the situation in Egypt, if you would. Maybe you have about 10 minutes or 7 minutes speech, and after that we go to some question and answers, if you want, of course.
Okay, I'll be
Okay,
short.
welcome. Thank you so much.
The second section, I want to talk about the Egyptian evaluation, the Egyptian strategy against the COVID-19. Egypt relied a gradual plan, especially since the start of the discovering cases of infection in Egypt was somewhat late. It was late for us here, which made the government not obliged to follow strict procedures that might affect the economy and the people's daily life. So, to be clear, I want to talk about that the countries we know differ among themselves regarding the size of economy, capabilities, resources, and medical preparations to face the crisis like COVID-19, which represents a challenge for all the countries. Consequently, taking strict and comprehensive measures from the first day is difficult, and therefore the Egyptian state plan was to lay down steps and scenarios to deal with the crisis. And generally, we can say that the philosophy of the Egyptian state has succeeded generally in dealing with the crisis up to this point. I believe that one of the most important reasons of containing the situation with the government and the state is to one, the transparency of the state with assessing the situation and involving the citizen in the crisis. Second is the commitment of many citizens to the state's instructions, although there is another non-compliant side, but in general it was good for the state. So we can talk about the numbers. Yesterday we arrived to injured about 1,173, 346 cases from positive to negative cases. The recovery cases we have here about 247 cases. The number of deaths we reached 78 cases here in Egypt. So here it's so important to highlight to the speech of John Jabour, the representative of the World Health Organization in Egypt, who said 85% of injuries in Egypt don't need any kind of medicine or treatment and heal themselves. And this speech is very good to the Egyptian experience dealing with this enemy COVID-19. It's important to note here that the importance of the Egyptian army role, which plays here, the army here plays a good role in and important one, more than one level to support through managing to the chemical warfare department in the armed forces, which providing sterilization passages, gags, and disinfection equipments. We can talk about gradual important actions and decisions which the government and the state took in last weeks. The state has allocated 100 billion pounds to allocate the virus and to give the measures it includes. He also directed the government, Mr. President Fattah al-Sisi directed the government to suspend studies in schools and the universities for a period of 2 weeks at the beginning of the crisis. In the context of the state's comprehensive plan to address the COVID-19, the president ordered to continue to raise the degree of preparation and to confront the virus according to the standards of the World Health Organization, in coordination and cooperation between all agencies concerned with the state, and implementing continuous awareness campaigns for citizens to different groups, and providing accurate information and real data from the first time. Prime Minister Mr. Mustafa Madbouli issued decisions to disrupt aircraft in all Egyptian airports since the afternoon of 19 March and to reduce the number of employees in government departments, agencies and public sector companies and the business sector, and to suspend all activities that include any large gatherings. The decisions also included a ban of transportation or move or citizen by all means all over the Republic from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. morning, starting from 25 March for the period of 15 days. There were also important medical procedures, medical decisions, providing all hospital and placing hospitals on the alert to face the crisis, while repairing hospitals for specific isolation and hotlines for communication, and to be ready to deal with all the cases in the future. Also increasing the allowances for Egyptian doctors. The state has increased the risk and infection allowance of Egyptian doctors will amid expectations that it will increase in the future again, in a way that reflects Egypt government awareness of what we call the White Egypt Army of doctors, who are the first shield to confront the virus. This is a positive development for the state's view to the medical sector, and it's a good decision, by the way. As well, University for Science and Technology has invented and developed 3 devices for industrial respiration to a low cost in preparation for production in short periods of time, with the participation of Egyptian companies in the short next days. The last things I want to talk about, decisions to support the industry sector. The Egyptian government announced a package of decisions to support the country's industrial sector and deal with the economic consequences of the outbreak of the coronavirus COVID-19. The Egyptian Prime Minister, Mr. Mustafa Madbouli, affirmed that the decision reflected the Egyptian state's keen on the speedy dealing to support the industrial sector, as well as facing the current challenge. The most important decisions is to reducing the price of natural gas for industry at 4.5 per million thermal units, and reducing electricity prices for industry for a high and medium and high voltage by 10 piasters. Also, the decisions included providing £1 billion to exporters during March and April 2020 to pay part of their dues according to the agreed mechanisms, with the additional 10% cash payment to exporters in June. Concerning the real estate tax, it was decided to postpone its payment due to the factors and tourist establishment for a period of 3 months, in addition to raising administrative reservation on all financiers. Also, with Egyptian government decided to reduce the stamp tax on non-resident to 1.25 per thousand, and reduce the stamp tax to residents to 0.5 per thousand instead of 1.5 per thousand. So non-residents are exempt from the capital gains tax permanently, then this tax or residents in postponed until 1/1/2022. So the last point is that the human dimension in the Egyptian aid abroad. We know Egypt, not developed countries like Italy or Spain or Germany or USA, but Egypt manages the crisis externally with the philosophy of common challenge and the need to give space to the humanitarian side and provide support. The Minister of Health, Dr. Hala Zayed, went to China in the crisis and carrying a message of solidarity from the President and the Egyptian society, and gave China medical supplies. And also the last visit to Italy, loaded with till now, and we can depend on the Egyptian state to facing this challenge in the future and next days. Thank you, Mr. Murad, and thank you, our listeners, and my friend, Dr. Vera, and the mic is you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes, first
Murat.
of all, let me thank you for your overwhelming analysis. It was really amazing. And using my priority as a moderator of these seminars, I want to ask one question. You partially outlined the answer, but about 1 week ago, I read on Al-Ahram an article by some professor from Ain Shams University, it's Egyptian university. So that's, if I remember and not mistaken with the numbers, that about 1 billion revenue each month come from the tourism. And its tourism and travel sector contributes about 12 or 13% of gross domestic product, and employees about 10% of country's workforce. And also that according to the World Bank, we will face in future with slowdown in international trade. And in my opinion, and also in this article, they outline that it will have negative effects on traffic on the Suez Canal channel, and how Egyptian government will face with this tricky situation.
A global crisis all over the world now, not Egyptian crisis.
Yeah,
but the numbers and the way that the government and the state deal with crisis, I think it's good till now. And the government procedures and the decisions, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and the president take, I think it's good enough for this step. But the challenge is what we will do, and it's a global challenge for all the world if this crisis continue for a few months. I think it's a problem now for all the countries all over the world. The Egyptian economy depends on the tourism as a main factor of the economy, and the Egyptian workers abroad, and there is a problem in these two sectors, and the world trade coming through the Suez Canal. I think these three main sources for the Egyptian economy are very important. But I think there are decisions from the country and the speech from the leadership of the state talk about be calm, and we will be over this crisis soon. This week is the more difficult week for the Egyptian government here facing the crisis, and I think the numbers are increasing, but not in this way, which make us like other countries. I talk about Italy or Spain. Hope they succeed in their fight. But here in Egypt, I think we can deal with this crisis, COVID-19, and the state make many scenarios and steps to deal with the crisis. And the debate here is about can we continue in this way, or go with our normal life, the workers go to work, and the life be again. But I think we are continuing in these procedures in about a week or 2 weeks at least. I think the Egyptian economy can deal with these challenges for 4 or 5 months in a good way, I think.
Inshallah, I also hope so. And now I give the floor to Dr. Vera Vishnikov, please.
Maybe somebody from our guests want to ask to.
As you want to just.
I have questions. Yes.
Okay. Please, Kamran, Dr. Kamran, please, your question.
Hello, Hani, and thank you for your interesting research, short research, I would say. My question is about politics, because when we say Middle East, Egypt, we cannot avoid politics. It's always about conflicts, crisis, and so on. I would like to ask you, how do you think will this coronavirus and the economic crisis, to which it leads, will somehow affect the regional policy, the ability of regional powers to conduct their policy, for example, Egypt in Libya or Iran in Syria and so on? And the second question is, we noticed that in this situation we have a solidarity problem, especially in the European Union. Every country gives priority to its own citizens. Every country closes its borders and thinks how to overcome this crisis, first of all concerning its own citizens. And do you see that in Arab countries you have some solidarity problem, some problem of unity in countering of this coronavirus?
Thank you for your question. I think really, and it's sure that this crisis, the COVID-19, will affect all the world's countries in politics, economic, and in its internal policies. We can talk about the definition of the priorities of each country, about to give its interest to the internal policies or outside of the regional role, like Iran, by the way. But Iran is different because Iran has ideological project, and it gives interest to the have a role in Syria and in Iraq and other countries, more than to protect their people and citizens, because it kills them already and not interesting to make a good life for them. But we need here to redefine the role of countries and its priorities to face or its definition to the streets. The streets are not now the bombs and weapons, but we talk about the human life, its internal security, human security. So the policies of each country will give more interest to health and education. I think the debate will be on this point. So I think the country's policy will change in its interest to make a regional role outside. Many countries will give more interest to the internal, and its people will make a pressure on it to give more interest for the internal policies to in education, health, not to make intervention in war and give the movements or give some factors a weapon to fight. I think it will change, by the way. The default or traditional meaning of security will be in its importance, but we will have another concepts and meaning of security, the human security, the health and internal security. You talk about your question about solidarity. Yes, we have a great problem, global problem about solidarity. And we can talk about, as I talked about individualism all over the world. I hear talk about the institutions, United Nations and other regional organizations. I talk about the big states like USA and China and other countries, which it a great challenge and very great exam for its manners. We see now USA manner and behavior with dealing with the crisis. I think it's not the USA which can be able to lead the world now. So I think it will affect the states' policies first. We will restore the meanings of the role of state intervention in the economy, and we have now to think about after COVID-19 world and the frame of the institutions and world organization, because it all failed in this exam, I think.
And
So thank you so much. And as
can I continue?
Huh?
May I
You have
continue?
one more question?
One more question follows from the previous. And given that we have some economy problems, social problems that maybe a citizen will not be happy with their governments, do you expect the second wave of Arab Spring?
I think one of the main challenges to the Arab world, it was the Arab Spring. I think we have to rethink from the beginning about the Arab Spring. It was a good demand from the people, but it leads to a bad situation now. So not all the time a good ideas be a good results. I hope you understand me. So
Yeah.
I think it's a threats, a global threats face all the countries, not only the Arab countries. The Arab countries try to do their best to face these countries. I think the strategy of Emirates and Saudi Arabia and here in Egypt, I think they do their best to deal in a good way with this challenge. Emirates give support the people with money and the economic sector and gave all the facilities to get over this crisis. Egypt here the government take many good decisions, and it will help to deal with this crisis in a good way. Also, the Saudi Arabia face the problem in a good procedures, and the other countries did this way. So another Arab Spring, I think it's not. We are away for this point. Maybe it be, in fact, by another reasons, not the cause of COVID-19. I think the governments did good in this way.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for your answers. Now, as I see our participants, Mr. Omar Ala, please, your question. Welcome.
Turn the microphone, please.
Yeah.
First, I want to hear everybody here. Thanks for this valuable conference. Especially, I want to ask a question for Mr. Hani about his point about a claim that some experts claim that the coronavirus and this pandemic is something occasional, and it will not affect the international politics, the core values of international system. Right now, it's the mainstream. Like, for instance, globalization, capitalization, liberalism, and all of its values, it's permanent. And the coronavirus, it's something occasional, temporarily, maybe take some month or even year, and everything go back to the previous situation, to the previous status. That's the claim, and I want to ask him about his opinion about this claim, and also somebody talking about the shift of the concept of national security from the national security and to humanitarian security. That's something supposed to do. That's something in the ideal time. But the actual and the forecasting that everything returns to the previous status, that all state will also concern on national security as a military expenditure. That's the perception of the national security is only the military aspect or something like that. And I wanted to know your opinion about this hypothesis or this thesis. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Omar, my friend, my dear friend. You know, Mr. Omar Ala is my best friend, and thank you for your.
I'm so glad to see you.
Nice to meet you, Omar, here. I think the view you talked about, I think it's, in my opinion, it's not true, because COVID-19, it's not a normal challenge, not like the Arab Spring, or not like any normal or traditional crisis like the economic crisis 2008, or even in 1933. Or not like the China and USA economic fighting or this crisis. It's not, it's a permanent crisis or challenges. But COVID-19 with its challenge, it's a global challenge, reached to all the countries in the world. We talk about 1,002,000 injuries and about tens thousands of deaths. Its results not only in the in health, and it's not related to World Health Organization. It's a challenge have many effects in political science, economy of the world. Not will affect not only in the short term, but in a long term and many generations. We talk here, like Henrik Singer said. I think also the way the world and the world organizations and the great big states deal with this crisis need from us to rethink about it. It redefine the world regime, world order, and it will affect the balance of powers, the traditional balance of powers, not only the military power or the military race between the big countries. I think the citizen and the way that Italian people and citizens and they feel about they don't belong to the European Union, they are alone facing this challenge. The way that individualism, Trump behave with the crisis in this way, I think all these indicators say that we are facing a new period facing all over the world. Is talking about globalization now is very far away from us. It's a need to protect the borders and the normal state we have now to redefine the capitalism and all these elements in this crisis. I think we are facing COVID-19 not only a traditional challenge, it will leave many effects about the economy and the political science and even in the individual manner and thinking of all of us in the future.
Thank you. I have a question too. Thank you very much. Thank you for your really interesting report and for your interesting presentation. I have one question. What country was the source of spreading coronavirus in Egypt? Where did he come to Egypt?
You asked how did COVID-19 come to Egypt?
Yes. From what country?
From what country? I think there is no specific source about this information, but I think the tourism, is a very main source here in Egypt. I think the first case was discovered from a tourist here in Egypt. I think it was coming from outside, not from the Egyptian citizen coming from abroad. No, but it was from a tourist here in Egypt, and we discovered many cases after that in the few days after this case.
Yes, I asked you about it because we know our colleagues and I now research some successful experience of South Korea and China to prevent the spreading of coronavirus. And the source of spreading the coronavirus in South Korea was the China, but our country.
May I can seek for the information and maybe could give you.
Yes, we were waiting the coronavirus from the China, but received from Italy. And when we met with our Pakistan experts, they said that coronavirus came from the Iran. That's why I asked you about the reason.
Egypt, not a China tourist or a Chinese citizen. I think from another nationality. I think.
Yeah, and the second question is how the Egyptian government did organize the distance learning for students maybe, or the education in the country, because all the country, I mean a lot of country in all over the world now is on distance learning or online learning. Yes, and it's really, it's not a problem, but it's a new a new a new feature, maybe a new, yes, a new vision of the education.
Yeah, we all know that COVID-19 challenge was happened suddenly, and no any of the countries wasn't ready to face this challenge. But by the way, we were really somehow lucky in this thing, because the Minister of Education had a plan of making learning from tablets. You know, every student now, or many of the students have their educational tablets from the ministry, and he had a philosophy to make learning education from internet, and the country, the government, by the way, they supported the internet speed with high levels speeds to make the students and the education be in a good way. I think the dealing with Minister of Education and the Ministry of Communications, they are doing good till now, not in ideal way, but it's good till now, and we have these days many exams for the students, and I think it will pass in a good way. And from the new educational year, I think it will be many good procedures to be ready for the next year, I think. So the Egyptian government gave its green light to do this from 4 months ago, I think, and we are somehow good in this way, more than some other Arab countries.
Okay, thank you. And I have a traditional question at the end of our seminars, but you answered it about the globalization. But I want to ask you again: what is the fate? What is the future of globalization, and what is the future of new world order? Do you think that will the globalization be alive as a structure, maybe as a concept?
I think there are many experts talking about the future of globalization. Some of them talk about the collapse of globalization, and others say that it will continue with all its structures and concepts. But I think the two ways will be together. I think many countries will do procedures and will go to the normal concept of the normal state, and make many policies to protect their borders, and the freedom of transportations or the movement of the individuals and the persons. I think it will be some obstacles, and some many indicators will prevent this huge movement. I think every country will take its procedures which will make discipline in this way. Also, the procedures in health and examination will be in a more than the normal. So the globalization has many indicators. Many of us can't get rid of it in few years. I think we have the globalization in all its indicators. So the countries will impose its rules to make a balance between globalizations and the human security and the health security, and to protect itself. And I think it will be a great debate after this period.
And the last question: what will be the role of Egypt in the Middle East in future after the pandemic?
You ask about the role of Egypt?
Yes, the role of Egypt in the Middle East after the pandemic.
I think COVID-19 make many challenges all over the world, but in Egypt, I think if we could pass this challenge, I think the Egyptian economy will be in a good way in few months, and we can make the challenge to a chance to make great changes to re-improve the economy of Egypt. And in the internal policies, I think Egypt make a review now of the policies towards the health sector and the priorities of the education and the health in Egypt. I think it will have many support from the country in the short term, I think. But the role of Egypt in the region, I think Egypt will do a great role in Libya, will stay because it's a national security for Egypt. The relation with some cases or crisis with Nahda Dam, Ethiopian dam, I think Egypt will make great pressure in this file. But you know, Egypt has a balance in its foreign policy to want to spread peace all over the world. So I think the main stream of the Egyptian policy will continue in this way, but the internal policy will change for supporting many sectors which invest in the citizens and the Egyptian persons.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you for your question. So, dear colleagues, we have a little bit time. Maybe you have any questions, please ask them. If not, we will sum up.
Yes.
I see with us, yes, Miss Sarah.
Hi.
Good day.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening. I want to thank you for your center and Dr. Hani for this important idea and view. And I want to ask him about the future of peace and international cooperation. How he sees this future according coronavirus and the future relation between countries.
Okay, I'll answer you, but you say about the future of
international cooperation.
Yeah, international cooperation. So I think COVID-19 crisis make a great challenge to the. We talk about the solidarity problem. One of our listeners asked this about the global solidarity in this crisis, and the reducing for the importance of other crises like the crisis related to the traditional security by its traditional way. So I think after this crisis, many points, many principles of the international relations will change. Many countries will do their best to invest in their citizens and redefine and make priorities of the internal policy more than the external policy. I think especially the European countries. Some countries, I think the humanitarian of all the fields in economy and the policy will be a priority for these countries. The international relation will be more I think, and I hope it will be more cooperation and make a new interest for the cases about environment and the great challenge for the world not to achieve economic or political individual victories. It's not, we all in the same destiny. I think it's the message that COVID-19 gave to all the leaders of the world. We have to deal with some issues like the traditional associations and organizations like United Nations and the WHO, World Health Organization. Its philosophy to deal with the crisis, I think it will be more important interests in these ways, and not about the challenge between the big states in war and in military and with weapons. I think we have to change our priorities in the future. We can face like these threats, which are the real challenges for the future of the human, not wars or not the traditional crisis like we have before COVID-19.
Thank you.
So thank you, dear colleagues. I think it's time to sum up because we already talked about 1 hour and a half. So first of all, let me thank you for your really comprehensive and detailed research on the topic of international approach to fighting COVID-19 and Egyptian approach. Also, I should outline that you are the most optimistic speaker during our
Yes, I agree with Murat.
yes, because you said that we will overcome with this crisis in maybe in 2 or in some few months. It's really so optimistic, and we hope, inshallah, it will be like that.
We have to be optimistic,
Yeah,
Mr. Murad. You
I
know.
agree with
Who
you.
will be if not we?
Yes.
So, and also I want to outline that Egypt also it's a really important partner for Russian Federation, and especially from point of view economic, because between our countries a good relationship and good and historic relationship. Even during the USSR period, Egypt was one of the strategic partner of the Moscow, and now we continue our trustful relations. And we hope that the Egyptian people and Egyptian government will overcome this crisis, because in Russia we also suffer a little bit, but we hope overcome the situation. So as Americans said, God bless us, Allah bless us. And I hope that everything will be okay. And one more time, thank you, our dear listeners, participants, for their interesting questions, because really today's discussion was so, how to say, interactive. And it's good because it really show us that it's our topics is so novel, it's so timely, and we try to do it. So
I
follow
hope
our news on our social sites, maybe website, and join our next meeting.
yes.
Maybe Dr. Vera Vishnikov, you have some final speech. If you want, you can provide. If not, I wish you all good luck and see you soon.
Yes, I want to say thank you. And I hope that we will meet again during our seminars, not only online but offline, because we are optimistic. That's why I think that in autumn we have such opportunity, yes, to go another country to meet offline. And thank you very much. I hope we will talk about something interesting, not only about coronavirus, but another maybe, yes, another issues and another interesting topics in the nearest future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Dear
Murad.
Mr.
Thank
Hani,
you, Dr. Vera.
thank you. Keep in touch and hope for future
Yes.
cooperation. In
Thank
future.
you, our guest, to
Thank you.
join
Bye-bye.
us today. Yes. Goodbye.
مع السلامة.
مع السلامة.